I'll be real honest with you guys. I don't feel anything either way when it comes to this George Floyd, Derek Chauvin trial, whatever you want to call it. It officially is the trial of Derek Chauvin. Three different charges. He's got 2 murder charges, a second and a third degree, and the manslaughter charge as well. We've went over the jurors. We've went over all of the pretrial stuff. And honestly, there is just really nothing going on right now, okay? We got all of the wrap up from different days, and there's been a bunch of different really good developments on the side for the prosecution, and in all honesty, my opinion on everything hasn't really changed that much, okay? Like, we got this USA article pulled up here. We're not going to read it. All we're going to do is just take a look at the headlines, because this is what normies have been fed, right? The backstory: Derek Chauvin trial, repeatedly showing of George Floyd video traumatizes witness, community, and journalists. Yeah, the reason, I think, because there is no hype, very little coverage around this. The only kind of coverage that you're going to get is just blurbs of, oh, the trial of the death of George Floyd was perpetrated by the terrible Derek Chauvin is going on right now. And, yep, the state's doing great, and the defense is looking floundering. That's really not the case if you're taking a look at it, but that's the narrative you're being fed, because you're all being set up. Because if you take a look at what's going on day to day, the prosecution is looking inept, and they just want to set you up for when, in eventuality, when this all kind of comes to a head, when it all ends, there's going to be riots. I don't care what Chauvin ends up getting charged with or what he doesn't end up getting charged with. I told you guys my opinion on this, and I might be wrong, I might be right, but here's what I'm thinking, right? I think the 2 murder charges, they're just off the table. I don't think that he maliciously tried to kill Floyd. There's no evidence to prove that, at least so far. There is at least reasonable doubt out there that him putting the knee on the neck or the back, whatever you want to call it, and there's no bruising and no real evidence that that would have caused anything, even though we had a expert witness, a karate expert, fucking Jimmy McMillan's kid, come up there and attest to the fact that, yeah, that police officer was really putting on a blood choke. Do you even know what that means? It's like a crip choke, but it's different. And that was the last stuff that we covered, was just the evidence that it's just not really bearing out. But the only thing is just that manslaughter thing, right? And unless the defense can prove, and I think it's an easy case, it's one that they can make, that Derek Chauvin holding him down there for over 9 minutes directly led to the cause of his death. Okay, we could all take a look at the overdose. We could all take a look at the other contributing factors that are there. It just depends on those 12 people that are sitting in the box, and that is why we covered the jurors themselves, because they all kind of have an ideological slant, and it mostly comes down to the narrative that they have been fed over the past year. Like, it informs just this headline. This is from USA Today, not necessarily a small outlet. Or how about one of the other outlets that we use a fair amount? Try to be balanced with my different coverage from different sources, and we got the one from Newsweek here. You got this fucking bitch who you can practically smell the cat piss off of right now. I have never seen a bigger pile of shit that needed to be set on fire more in my life. Somebody who has been fed a false lie, somebody who has been sold something cut with fentanyl in order for her to be locking herself to fence and making her a total spectacle. Obviously, she's not on a hunger strike, but it's somebody who doesn't understand what the fuck is actually going on. Okay, yeah, remove qualified immunity. Justice will not be whatever. The left can never meme because there's too many words on that fucking screen. Locks for stolen lives. Why? It really doesn't matter. Who gives a shit? And I will guarantee she is not following the trial as close as she needs to in order to make an informed and intelligent decision on the matter. That's not the point. It's all about she's already got her pre-described outcome. George Floyd, lives mattered. Well, you should have told that to the drug dealer who was also in the car. Whoops. Did that get out? Yeah, it did. Apparently, he didn't think that Floyd's life mattered. But anyways, so we went through a few days worth of stuff, right? On the opening day, we went through briefly the opening arguments because, yeah, it just lays out everything that you're going to see. Hey, you're going to see experts. They're going to provide testimony, or they're going to provide evidence that prove either way that Chauvin is guilty of murder or manslaughter, or if he's going to be acquitted from manslaughter or murder. So many legalese terms. But on the first day, yes, I alluded to the karate expert who was up there. Now he refers to himself as an expert in security and martial arts because he's gotten his ass kicked a couple of times. And because he also attended a few different riots in the Minneapolis area. Yeah, didn't really want that one to fucking get out there. And we got each and every day, we're just going to highlight a couple of the more important witnesses because there was a lot of just formulaic, straightforward witnesses that were just there. Oh, I seen some stuff. Okay, cool. Thank you. Put that into evidence. No real revelations on most of these people, but on some of them. State's third witness, Donald Williams, great name. The bystander who purportedly has expertise in security and martial arts. Those of you who watched the bystander video will perhaps best remember Williams as the bro bystander actively engaging with officers while Floyd was restrained on the street. Williams' security background appears to be consists primarily of being a bouncer and a similar non-credentialed activities. Yeah, that makes you an expert, I guess. I don't know. It makes him an expert in security and martial arts as much as me having a microphone makes me a expert in the law. I'm just trying to do my best here. And his martial arts background consists of some high school and junior college wrestling and some mixed martial arts training at the local gym, where Williams said he was trained not only with members of the Minneapolis Police Department, not only with members of the FBI, but also with members of the CIA. This dude is definitely a highly trained individual, and definitely all of those things 100% happened. Having had the opportunity to meet my share of CIA personnel, color me skeptical when they are announcing themselves as such at a local MMA gym. Yeah, this is the commentary from the guy who I'm getting the wrap-ups from the day. I could provide links and all of the videos on here as well that you can watch as well at your own leisure, but it's just always easier to go through a nice, concise wrap-up of the highlights of the day. He's got everything categorized here. It's a great resource. And I think I'm going to be going through this week by week, not doing it every day unless there is something absolutely cataclysmic that happens on either side. It's supposed to go 4 weeks, and yeah, I don't really want to make a living out of fucking just paying attention to this trial because it is just whatever so far. But this also just the first week. Anyways, it appears that Williams was not formally recognized as an expert, and thank goodness for that, but much of his testimony was of the form one would expect from an expert, including conclusory opinions rather than merely recounting his observations. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, and here's the important part. Of particular note, Williams affirmatively characterized Chauvin's neck restraint as constituting a so-called blood choke. Okay, in fact, it could not possibly have been anything of the sort. A carotid choke hold, which involves cutting off blood supply to the brain, requires pressure on both sides of the neck, where both carotid arteries are. Applying pressure to only one side of the neck, as Chauvin's knee was doing in some instances, other instances it was also on his back, cannot block both arteries. Yeah, unless he has one of those split knees, which I don't think he has. And Floyd's neck was not so positioned on the street where the ground would provide the necessary force to the opposite side of Floyd's neck. Further, a blood choke results in loss of consciousness within seconds and does not require nearly 10 minutes to achieve that physiological state. Exactly. And that was the crux, the main point of this guy's testimony. And I can tell you right away, based on my expertise, there are two types of a choke, right? He would have been much more advantageous to his claims if he would have said that Chauvin was applying a wind choke, which is much more painful. And you know what? All the struggle that Floyd was putting up, you could say that, yes, okay, I can't breathe. Therefore, yeah, he was trying to crush the trachea and it would result in labored breathing that would have been a lot more passable. That would have perhaps swayed some jurors in order to think that that would have happened. But a blood choke, the reason why you have to apply pressure on both sides of the neck, like Buddy pointed out here, is that blood flows up both sides of your neck and it also returns back through different veins as well. And also, there was a lot made of the fact that the paramedics and other people who provided help for Floyd couldn't find a pulse on his wrist, okay? The much more reliable and the much easier way for everybody to find a pulse is right there on your neck. And the best way to find a pulse is to use 2 fingers, not your thumb. There is a little bit of a pulse that can throw off if you're doing any sort of measurement when you're trying to do pulse rate that runs through your thumb, and you shouldn't be trying to find a pulse with that. And anybody who does any sort of heart rate monitoring, like say if you have a client and they are being trained on cardiovascular fitness. I don't know why a personal trainer would know anything about that or anything. Yeah, finding a pulse on your arm is not the easiest thing in the world to do, right? If you're in very good shape, it's easy to find. All you need to do is just kind of flick your wrist back as such, apply 3 fingers right on the outside, and you can just reach around. And within a couple of maybe movements, you'll be able to find your pulse and count it out for 10 seconds, multiply it by 6, and there you go. You got your beats per minute, right? But on somebody who is a little bit larger, somebody who is, say, 240 pounds, somebody who is not a lean 240 pounds, but instead is a drug addicted 240 pounds, might be a little bit difficult to find it on the wrist. So I just wanted to dispel that. Nobody's really been talking about it. And even paramedics in the heat of the moment aren't going to be able to find it on somebody's large arm quickly, and especially somebody who doesn't have specific knowledge as to the easiest way to find that. But that was the important part from the first day. There were some other people that popped up there, but yeah, old Donnie Williams, a karate expert, that dude definitely provided some much needed insight. So day 2, big witness was this lady right here. She was a plainclothes firefighter who was kind of Karening the entire situation. She was being lippy. Her testimony is very funny. And then Judge Cahill right here dressed her down. Oh, so appropriately. It was like looking at a toddler throwing a temper tantrum in a supermarket and her father taking her aside and just giving her a dressing down. She had to come back the following day because the judge was just absolutely done with her. Less than appropriate conduct in his courtroom. And she came back and she was very, yes, no, yes, sir, no, sir. And it was genius to see. She really didn't provide anything illuminating. It was more or less just her conduct, which kind of got any sort of play. Once again, like you can see here, the wrap up, yeah, stayed focused on feelings. That's their entire play. That was the entire crux of their opening argument, because they have to bang on emotions because the evidence doesn't really lead to any affirmation of their charges. Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, was trying to get a big conviction because he wanted to make an example out of this. Day 3 was a problem. It was a problem, okay? There were 2 important witnesses to come up. One was a clerk, and another was the aforementioned friend in the vehicle. It would be Christopher Martin of Cup Foods. So he was a clerk, he observed, and there's also been internal closed circuit security footage that has been released from inside Cup Foods, and Floyd is fucking off his rocker high when he is in there. He is swaying back and forth. He is moving side to side. He is falling asleep, or just about falling asleep at one point. Like, the dude was fucked up inside. And that's what Christopher Martin, the 19-year-old black male, who was the clerk in Cup Foods, to whom Floyd attempted to pass a counterfeit 20 bill, and to whom Floyd's passenger had similarly tried to pass a bad bill earlier in the day. Martin no longer works at Cup Foods. Yeah, probably ended up facing quite a bit of scrutiny based on the fact that he was the one who wanted to call 911. Manager ended up going forward with that. He would have been identified, and obviously it's a very, very bad part of town, hence why there are so many security cameras, and one specifically for the city of Minnesota, because it is city of Minneapolis, because it is such a high crime area. That this dude's life, unfortunately, would be in trouble. Not being hyperbolic, that's just how it is. Martin's later testimony was largely as a sidewalk bystander witness of Floyd's arrest, and the portion of his testimony added little value, in the sense that we've already heard from numerous bystander witnesses with essentially the same viewpoint. Yeah, exactly. There were like 20 people that were around saying, yeah, he was struggling. Yes, he was calling for his mama, who is not his mom, because his mom died 2 years ago. And if he hasn't gotten over that, it's clearly a crux. And we actually know who the mama who he was calling out for was. But that's coming up very shortly. Several key facets of Martin's testimony could really only be characterized as favorable for the defense, including Floyd had indeed passed a rather obviously fake counterfeit bill. Floyd appeared substantively impaired while in the store. Floyd was an unusually large man. It was what made Martin take exceptional notice of Floyd in the first place. Floyd had refused repeated offers to simply make good on the bad bill, pay for his cigarettes with actual money, and the whole incident would be forgotten. Yeah, exactly. Twice. Twice the kid. He's 19. Okay, he is a male. Or a man, rather. Still a man. I think he identifies that way, right? What does that prove? Well, there was more drugs and there was a lot more going on in Floyd's system prior to the ingestion of the fentanyl cut methamphetamine cocktail that he ingested before the police officers got him out of his Mercedes-Benz. Okay, so 2 points out of Charles McMillan's testimony. He was the black guy at the top of the screen there, a 61-year-old male. He was around before most of the other bystanders started to congregate around the scene. So he had a little bit of a different perspective of how everything started to go down. So first, at one point, for example, the prosecution is rolling body camera footage showing the officers moving towards Floyd's laying on the ground as they position themselves to do a full body restraint, and Floyd deliberately kicks out the officer with both legs. It was this conduct that led to the officer sending Officer Tao, to look for ankle hobbles, and why they are so determined to restrain Floyd's legs from that point forward. That is another reason why the restraint was left on for so long, was left on for those 9 minutes, and then after the paramedics arrived as well, to make sure that he wasn't, I don't know, they didn't know for sure if he was fucked out of his mind, but rather, he's a big dude. George Floyd was like 6'6", 240, okay? If he was just playing nice until some people were going to move him into an ambulance and then he hulked out and busted free, who knows, maybe, because they were under the assumption that it was also excited delirium, something that happens after you take PCP. Like, this dude has an extensive drug history, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that he would have been ingesting acid or PCP. So, anyways, back to this. Second, while being questioned by prosecutor Eldridge, McMillan was asked how Floyd appeared to him while being restrained. Yeah, this kind of backfired on the prosecution. With Chauvin's knee on Floyd's neck, I expect Eldridge was hoping for a reply along the lines of he looked like he was being killed. Instead, what Eldridge got was McMillan stating that Floyd had foam running out of his mouth. Oof, oof. Perhaps stunned Eldridge responded with foam in his mouth? And McMillan immediately affirmed, yes, foam in and around his mouth. Ooh, I don't know. Perhaps we need to call back up the karate expert to tell us how a blood choke can induce foam coming out of your mouth. Foaming in the lungs and by extension out of his mouth, of course, is a notable indication of a pathological fentanyl overdose. This would obviously reinforce the likely defense narrative that Floyd was killed not by Chauvin's knee, but by the threefold fatal dose of meth and fentanyl speedball drug cocktail he rapidly ingested to avoid its discovery by police. Yeah. That was the highlight of day 3. Definitely another backfire on the prosecution. And this is where we're going to wrap it up because we got one more witness that came out, and it was Courtney Ross. She was George Floyd's girlfriend, I suppose. They were both addicted to opioids and therefore met on a wonderful fentanyl evening one day in lovely Minneapolis, and she ended up kind of not providing testimony that the prosecution would have appreciated out of her. But it's good because it provides some more insight into this as well. The first of the state's witnesses today was Courtney Ross, who shared Floyd's drug addiction with him as they met as addicts, and whom has been variously characterized as Floyd's girl or fiancée. Generally speaking, Ross testified with the kind of evasiveness we've come to expect from some state witnesses. Yeah, that's been a lot of just one-word answers, not really anything out of the pale, but hence why we didn't do a breakdown of every single witness, because we'd be here for a week and a half. This video is already going to be a lot longer than it needs to, but anyways, including telling part rather than the whole truth in response to the defense questioning, claiming she couldn't recall what she previously told investigators, and compelling the defense to refresh her recollection with transcripts that'll come in important. And this only goes one way. It seems the only forgotten prior testimony is that which would be helpful to the defense, yes. In a blog post, or rather disclosed on cross-examination by the defense, that Floyd's pet name for Ross and the moniker under which she had her listed in his cell phone was Mama. Huh. Okay. Was she the mama he was calling for while restrained on the street? Yes. Because earlier in the recap, appealing to the video Floyd calling out Mama as he died. Yeah. not from when the police officers initially approached the Mercedes-Benz where everybody was sitting and him screaming like he did previously before in 2019's arrest. It's like, oh man, my mom just died. At least in 2019, she was only been dead a year, but in 2020, she had been dead for 2 years, and him screaming for mama, mama, mama. While it could be heartbreaking if Floyd also wasn't 46 fucking years old, has nothing to do with his mother. And here's something else that was a revelation. Ross recounting that Floyd had experienced a previous overdose in March 2020, taking pills similar or identical to the ones he took on May 25th. During which time she had to bring him to the hospital because he was experiencing intense stomach pain, much of which he experienced on May 25th when restrained by a police officer after self-ingesting a bunch of these pills in an effort to avoid their discovery by police. Again, some people will immediately say, see, the war on drugs doesn't work because it just led to somebody doing something that they wouldn't have normally done. But it shows a pattern. It shows a pattern of making really stupid fucking decisions. Ross herself had back in March taken those same pills and reported to investigators that she had thought that they were going to make her die, much like Floyd was saying when he felt he was going to die while restrained on March 25th after a self-ingestion of similar pills. She noted that her normal opioids were relaxing and took her pain away, but these strange pills acted as a stimulant, such that she was jittery and couldn't sleep all night. She had also told investigators that in March overdose, she observed foam around Floyd's mouth. Fucking oof. Just as the mouth was foaming on May 25th. This is important evidence because the state's argument in the opening is that it couldn't have been the fentanyl in Floyd's system that killed him because fentanyl, an opioid, makes somebody sleepy when they overdose on it, and Floyd was clearly not sleeping. Yeah, that's why he also had methamphetamine in his system, but we haven't had any medical experts, actual experts, come forth and testify yet. There are several that are supposed to be coming up in the next couple of weeks as well. And the only other thing that is of importance is that we got something right here. Cross-examination also revealed that Ross had told investigators that she believed Floyd had been clean off drugs for a substantial period of time leading up to May 25th, perhaps right up until just 2 weeks prior to his death. This clean period suggests all kinds of considerations with respect to the question of tolerance, which in turn touches on whether Floyd had such a high tolerance to his drug of choice that even a 3-fold fatal dose might not be able to kill him. Exactly. Okay? So some smooth-brained fucking pundits out there believe that, oh, he takes all those opioids all the time. That wouldn't have killed him, not that dose. Well, not if he'd been clean for a significant amount of time right up until May 25th when he took what would have been a horse lethal amount of fentanyl. It wasn't a good week. It was not a good week for the defense, okay? And as much as USA Today, CNN, MSNBC, all of the other alphabet soup networks would like to paint it as catastrophic and the defense has no choice of competent defense going forward, that's just clearly not the case. That's not the case. A lot of people aren't doing kind of breakdown like what these resources are providing, and I'm very thankful of that. There was a little bit of a trial that continued on into Good Friday yesterday, but nothing of importance came up. It was just a couple of police officers that went up there and was like, yep, excessive force, which is kind of procedural, and they have to say that because they dismissed Chauvin and they don't want to self-incriminate themselves and set themselves up for the prosecution for wrongful dismissal suits. It really doesn't add anything to the prosecution, but hey, out of sake of clarity, that's why there's no day 5 recap as well. So I don't know, there was a whole bunch of stuff here. The karate expert didn't really provide any sort of insight as to the impropriety of using the knee on the neck or the knee on the back, the firefighter putting on a show, and Floyd's girlfriend, fuck buddy, however you want to put it. Yeah, really kind of dispelled every sort of doubt you could have had with an overdose. Damning was that week, but it could all turn around next week. And really, with a 4-week trial, all that's going to be needed from the defense or from the prosecution is just a really, really, really strong finish. Because as much as I'd like to believe that all of those jurors are going to be objective and fair to both parties, we've seen their breakdown, and I'm not terribly optimistic on that. So that'll do it for the George Floyd case this week, unless something happens tomorrow, which I find highly, highly, highly improbable. We'll probably be talking about this Friday, Saturday once again to give you guys another recap unless something breaks midweek that requires coverage. But until then, there's your Floyd update. And I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.